Ever get that feeling? You're chatting with someone, maybe leaning in a little too close, and you start to wonder, is it me? Is my breath betraying me right now?
You're definitely not alone. Turns out, halitosis, or chronic bad breath, affects about half of all adults.
50%. Okay, well, that's both reassuring and slightly alarming.
Uh,
But it definitely underscores why we're doing this deep dive into the science of bad breath. Because, let's be real, it's not just about awkward encounters, right?
Very right.
Sometimes it's a sign of something deeper going on.
You hit the nail on the head. While we all experience that fleeting morning breath, we're digging into the persistent kind of halitosis, the kind that can be a red flag for your overall health.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty, can you explain what actually causes that less than fresh feeling?
It all boils down to volatile sulfur compounds, or VSCs.
Volatile sulfur compounds. That sounds pretty intense.
They are, and they're the main culprits behind that unpleasant odor we associate with bad breath. These compounds are released by certain types of bacteria that thrive in our mouths, especially when they have plenty of food and a cozy place to hang out.
Okay, so we're talking about the bacteria that hang out in plaque and those hard-to-reach crevices between our teeth.
Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. Those VSCs, those sulfur compounds, have a very distinct smell. In fact, they're responsible for the aroma of things like rotten eggs and sewage.
Okay, that's a vivid and slightly nauseating analogy. So when we talk about banishing bad breath, we're essentially waging war on these microscopic stink bombs.
Precisely. And to win that war, we need to understand their tactics.
All right, so let's talk strategy. What are some of the most common causes, the things that give these odor-causing bacteria the upper hand? Our sources mention oral hygiene a lot.
Rightfully so. Think of your mouth like a bustling city. If the sanitation department, aka your oral hygiene routine, isn't up to par, things can get messy fast.
And by messy, we mean smelly. But I have to admit, I'm a little fuzzy on the specifics. We all know we should brush and floss, but why is it so important for combating bad breath?
It's not just about removing food particles, though that's definitely part of it. It's about disrupting the biofilm, that sticky plaque, where those VSC-producing bacteria love to build their empires.
So when we brush and floss diligently, we're essentially evicting those bacteria from their prime real estate.
Exactly. And those deep pockets we dentists always talk about, the ones that form between your teeth and gums when plaque isn't properly removed, they become the ultimate bacterial penthouse suites.
Okay, I'm getting a much clearer and slightly terrifying picture of what's happening in my mouth right now. But let's talk about something our listeners might find reassuring. Saliva. Our sources emphasize how important it is, but I'll be honest, I never gave much thought to spit before.
Most people don't, but it's actually your mouth's secret weapon.
Really? Tell me more.
It's all about flow. Saliva constantly flushes away food debris and bacteria, preventing them from settling down and setting up shop. It also has natural antibacterial properties. Think of it as your mouth's very own cleaning crew working around the clock to keep things fresh.
And when that cleaning crew goes on strike, we're talking dry mouth, which our sources list as a major bad breath contributor.
Precisely. When your mouth is dry, those odor-causing bacteria are free to throw a party.
And no one wants an invitation to that party.
Ah,
So we've covered poor oral hygiene and dry mouth as two major culprits, but our sources also mention some more surprising causes, right?
absolutely. While it's easy to assume bad breath is always about what we eat or forget to brush, sometimes it's a sign of something more complex happening beneath the surface.
Okay, this is where I think a lot of our listeners might be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Medical conditions as a cause of bad breath.
Right.
It's not something you hear every day.
It's true, and it highlights why this deep dive goes beyond surface-level advice.
Right.
Some of the conditions our sources mention are diabetes,
Okay.
sinus infections.
Even liver and kidney disease?
Let's break those down a bit.
Sure.
Starting with diabetes.
Okay.
What's the connection there?
It all comes down to how your body uses sugar for energy.
Okay.
In people with diabetes, especially if their blood sugar isn't well managed,
Right.
the body might not produce enough insulin,
Okay.
or its cells might not use insulin effectively.
And insulin is what helps your body use glucose, right?
Exactly.
So if there's an issue with insulin, what happens?
Your body can't utilize glucose as its primary energy source.
Right.
So it starts breaking down fat for fuel instead.
Okay.
Now, this process of burning fat for energy
Yeah.
produces byproducts called ketones.
ketones, I've heard of those, but mostly in the context of ketogenic diets.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is where that distinctive keto breath comes in.
Right. At normal levels, ketones aren't a problem.
Right.
But if they build up in the bloodstream,
Yeah.
a condition called ketoacidosis can develop.
And one of the signs of ketoacidosis is that telltale fruity smell on the breath.
Precisely. It's like your body is sending up a signal flare indicating that something's out of whack.
Wow.
So if someone notices a sudden persistent change in their breath, especially if it's accompanied by other symptoms,
Like what?
like unexplained weight loss,
Okay.
increased thirst, or frequent urination, it's crucial to consult a doctor.
It's amazing how our breath can hold so many clues about our overall health.
It really is, and it highlights why understanding the root causes of halitosis is so important.
Right.
It's not always as simple as popping a breath mint.
Okay, so we've covered diabetes and ketoacidosis. What about those other conditions you mentioned, like sinus infections?
Sure.
How in the world can those cause bad breath?
Think about what happens when you have a sinus infection.
Okay.
Your body produces excess mucus,
Right.
leading to that dreaded post-nasal drip.
Okay, so far so gross.
Yeah.
But I don't see how that translates to bad breath.
Well, remember those volatile sulfur compounds we talked about earlier?
Yes.
The ones produced by certain bacteria?
Uh-huh.
They absolutely thrive in that environment.
Really?
That mucus dripping down the back of your throat
Yeah.
becomes a feast for these bacteria,
Oh.
leading to, you guessed it, bad breath.
So it's not just the mucus itself that smells bad, it's the bacteria going to town on it.
Exactly. And because this type of bad breath originates in the back of the throat
Right.
rather than the mouth itself. It can be particularly stubborn and difficult to mask with things like mouthwash or chewing gum.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of addressing the root cause of the sinus infection itself, rather than just trying to cover up the symptom.
Right.
What about those other conditions like liver and kidney disease?
Mm-hmm.
Those seem even more removed from bad breath on the surface.
They do, but the connection is there.
Oh.
Essentially, any condition that affects the way your body filters and removes waste products can potentially lead to bad breath.
So if your liver or kidneys aren't functioning optimally,
Yeah.
those waste products can build up and release those telltale volatile sulfur compounds.
Precisely. It's like a domino effect.
Wow.
And while these conditions are less likely to cause bad breath as an isolated symptom,
Yeah.
it's still an important connection to be aware of.
This deep dive is really opening my eyes to the complex interplay between our oral health and our overall well-being.
Right.
It's not just about a pretty smile.
Mm-hmm.
It's about understanding what our breath is trying to tell us.
Absolutely.
Okay, so while we've delved into some of the more serious causes of bad breath,
Yeah.
let's not forget that in many cases it's easily manageable with some simple lifestyle changes and home remedies.
Right. Simple things can make a big difference.
Okay, good. Because I was starting to get a little worried there for a minute.
Yeah.
So for those of us who are just dealing with the occasional bout of halitosis,
Right.
not a chronic condition,
Mm-hmm.
what are some things we can do at home to freshen up?
Our sources highlight a few surprisingly effective remedies. Things you probably already have in your kitchen.
Like what? Give us the goods. I'm all about easy solutions.
One of the simplest and most effective remedies is plain unsweetened yogurt.
Yogurt. Really? I would have thought that would make things worse, not better.
It seems counterintuitive, but remember those beneficial bacteria we talked about? The ones that help keep our gut microbiome in check?
Yeah.
Well, those same good bacteria can work wonders in our mouths, too.
So it's like introducing a team of microscopic peacekeepers to restore order in the oral ecosystem.
Exactly. Yogurt is naturally rich in probiotics, those live microorganisms that can help crowd out the odor-causing bacteria.
So it's not just about masking the smell. It's about addressing the root cause by promoting a healthy balance of bacteria.
You got it. And this next one might surprise you. Parsley.
Parsley.
Yeah.
As in the garnish that often gets left on the plate.
The very same. It turns out parsley is a natural breath freshener. It contains chlorophyll,
Right.
a compound that not only gives plants their green color, but also has deodorizing properties.
So next time I'm at a restaurant, I should be asking for extra parsley instead of a mint.
It couldn't hurt. And while you're at it, consider ordering some green tea.
Green tea. Okay, I'm seeing a theme here. Natural remedies for the win. But what's so special about green tea? I know it's loaded with antioxidants.
Right.
But does it also have those, like, odor-fighting superpowers?
It does. Green tea contains compounds called catechins, which have been shown to have antibacterial and odor-neutralizing effects. So sipping on green tea throughout the day can actually help keep those bad breath bacteria in check.
This is all such great information, but I have to admit I've saved the most burning question for last.
Okay.
And it's a bit of a sensitive one.
Yeah.
How can you really tell if you have bad breath? I
Yeah.
mean, it's not like you can always smell your own breath.
You're absolutely right. It's one of those things that's notoriously difficult to self-diagnose.
So what's the solution? Are we destined to live in a constant state of breath-related paranoia?
Not necessarily. The key is to be proactive about your oral hygiene, follow the tips we've discussed today, and, perhaps most importantly, don't be afraid to ask a trusted friend or family member for an honest opinion.
Okay, that's good advice. But I have to say, asking someone to be your breath critic takes guts.
It does, but it's better to hear it from someone you trust than to be caught off guard in a social situation.
You make a very valid point. Well, there you have it, folks. Another deep dive conquered. We've journeyed through the science of bad breath, uncovered its surprising causes, and armed you with some practical tips for banishing it for good.
And hopefully we've also encouraged you to start a more open and honest conversation about oral health because, let's face it, everyone breathes.
Yeah.
And understanding how to keep our breath fresh is a win for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, the next time you're reaching for a breath mint, remember, it's not just about masking the problem. It's about understanding that fascinating and sometimes complex world inside your mouth. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay fresh.